Welcome to the March 26th, 2019 episode of Reactive Consciousness, our in-depth podcast about what happened this week in our lives. I am your stumbling host, vysethebold, and this is...
Lotus Prince.
And this is...
Lotus Prince. OG3 back again.
It's just you, me, and me.
Yeah, the true OG2, unless you count you and... Dan, which
and
is the
Allen.
Super double true OG.
He's episode 0.
Yeah.
This incarnation is the Shin form, if you will.
the Kiwami podcast.
The Shin form, but I think the only way you could get the old episode is if you had happened upon the Corrective Consciousness web page, which still exists but isn't updated or anything, and listen to it there embedded.
Perfect.
Which is pretty crazy. So you can go back and listen to episode 0 if you can find it. I don't recommend it. It's over 10 years old, but that was back when I was still in college. But we actually have a ton to talk about this week. We unfortunately don't have a third, but that's okay. We can have 2 caballeros and dos amigos run this show. Yes. There are 4 musketeers, aren't there, by the end of that first book?
I actually haven't read it.
Oh, yeah. There are 4 musketeers. That's why the 2 sequels have 4 musketeers in both of them.
They're multiplying.
Yep. And it's a terrible candy bar, by the way. Snickers is way better.
Since I've had it, but all those candy bars, Musketeer, Snickers,
Snickers is way better as peanuts. Come on.
Yeah, but I mean, they're all just kind of oh, okay. I'll get it for free on Halloween, I guess. It's fine.
But it'll cut into my time in trick-or-treating.
Oh, we can stay up all night and play Clue?
Yes. Okay, you kind of are our Carlton, if we had one.
Tom Jones.
Okay, so our next LP will be
The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. The entire series.
It's Not Unusual by Thomas Jones. So anyway, you have a pretty big announcement here from a business superpower here, so I better let you take the reins because I didn't look up the details, but I did hear about it.
I don't even really have too terribly much details myself, but It looks like Google is going to try to get into the video game market with what is called, strangely, the Stadia, Stadia. It's like the plural of stadium, but not how modern English uses the plural of stadium. It's I don't know, I'm trying to think of another word that uses A instead of something S, and I'm coming up short. Let's go with
data instead of datum.
Yeah, datum, data, there we go. And stadium, Stadia, obviously. So so Google is getting into the gaming industry with Stadia, and I wasn't quite sure as to exactly what it was. I think it's mostly going to be like a streaming service. I don't think they're coming out with a dedicated console or anything. I think it's more a service you can use.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be browser-based, or the browser will have a plugin that will allow you to stream easily. What I understand from the naming convention is maybe they're trying to do something like Twitch. That would
make sense.
Because that makes sense. You'll be playing a game and then other people can join and watch.
Mm-hmm. Just the thing that concerns me though is that one of the big hype announcements behind this thing was that it was going to be 4K 60 FPS, and like sometime in the
Not
future,
gonna happen. We don't have the infrastructure for
well,
it.
that's where I was gonna go with this. Yeah, because they said in the future, and I don't know when the future is. Like sometime that's not now. Who knows when? But they said eventually they would like to get 8K and 120 FPS, and some countries can eat that shit up. But like America's,
Canada.
yeah. Well, I was thinking just like China and Japan, like all the time. But like America's internet infrastructure was great when it was made, like in the fucking 90s, but like it hasn't really been updated since. So your Stadia can be the greatest technology that's ever existed, but our country itself won't be able to handle it. We have shitty internet infrastructure. There are people who live out in the middle of nowhere who have awful internet connections. Like even the people who have good internet connections by our country standards have to be in big city areas. And on top of all that, there are brutal data caps, and our own internet service providers are actively trying to fuck us over as best they can. If you live in an area with only one service provider, you're just in trouble. And lots of people live in areas with one service provider. So the Google Stadia sounds great for countries that are not the country it was made in. But I don't know about America.
Yeah, not only that, but we, our internet's not treated as a utility like it is in other countries. As of right now, it looks like they are trying to fight that ruling. They're bringing that back to the House of Representatives.
It's like mandatory for most people. Well, I don't know about most, but lots of people's jobs and day-to-day life.
Yeah, well, we lost that internet freedom, unfortunately. With the way that our FCC is running things, so it's unfortunate that that's a political thing.
Businessmen trying to run
they're not even out of touch; they're just evil.
Well, there are evil ones, but I would assume that a lot of the politicians in general just have no idea about this internet thing. These computers and these nerds who use them. It's like, dude, this isn't 30 years ago. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. No, you're right. I
do agree though that the people who actually know what they're doing, like oh my god, I forgot the guy's name already. The former Verizon guy with the giant Reese's cup mug, that piece of shit guy.
I don't
know what I'm talking about, who was trying to argue against net neutrality. Ajit Pai, that's the guy.
People
like him,
the FCC.
People like him know what the internet is and how it works, and are just evil pieces of shit. That's them. Politicians, I think, are possibly evil, definitely out of touch in regard to the internet specifically, and the people who work with Verizon and Comcast are just plain evil.
I'm convinced they don't actually understand much technologically, so which I don't think is too far off. But the FCC guy, Ajit Pai, is no good. He knows what's going on. He's just holding people hostage.
Yeah, his entire argument against net neutrality is why try to lock down some company from doing something? I promise they won't do it. And it's like, well, the whole point of locking it down is so they definitely won't do it. And it's like, why are we even having this argument?
Yeah, why did you make this rule so they could?
Take that with any other law. Any other law. There's no need to outlaw murder. I promise I won't murder anybody. It's like, well, maybe I should outlaw it so you fucking are punished if you do. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I think along with this, Apple also announced their streaming service, which also sounded terrible.
I actually didn't even hear about that because I never follow Apple stuff.
Yeah, their iOS streaming service for gaming, and it did not sound good. It just sounded terrible.
The Google thing did sound good. It's just our country can't handle it.
Yeah. I'm not interested. I don't think either of them are going to be, what we want or need yet. So I expect both of them to fail. I mean, and I don't really want to see Google have a video game service either. So
yeah.
I mean, selfishly, I think we have a lot, and I think we have a lot of good choice, and I don't want Google to kill everybody, which they could potentially do.
Yeah.
So, I'm good. Any other thoughts on that?
Not particularly. I mean, again, a lot of the world will probably eat the Stadia right up. It's just that, like, we need a major overhaul on... Not even... I mean, this is getting a little off topic.
Only really Google is capable of bringing us that kind of infrastructure. Like, I don't know of any other company.
Well, yeah, there's no way Google's going to bring us
really
infrastructure, but, like, we still need an overhaul on internet infrastructure and even regular infrastructure. Like, just pipes and bridges and streets
Our
and shit.
bridges
like,
really need it right now. They really need it. Yeah. Well, speaking of giant conglomerates, I did want to talk about this. This happened this week. Disney and 20th Century Fox finished their merger, officially merged this week. So the Simpsons are now Disney characters. Yeah, and so is Ellen Ripley and all your favorite 20th Century Fox.
Yeah, that's out there. Not that.
Yeah. There's lots of stuff.
You know what that means. You know what that means. Technically,
the Alien Queen is a Disney princess.
Yeah, I was gonna say all of her brood are Disney princesses.
Well,
the female ones, I suppose.
Anastasia is now a Disney princess instead of being in Don Bluth segregated area.
But wasn't she still based on like the real the Romanov family? So like
yes, but
the real life historical figure is a Disney princess.
Well, there are Pocahontas is considered a Disney princess.
That's fair
she's
enough.
real.
It's real Pocahontas. Yeah, all right.
Come on, don't give me that crap.
Oh.
But I wanted to.
Exactly.
So here's a cool thing that they could do. I doubt if they will. But the original release of Star Wars, back in the 70s, was it 78?
It was late 70s, like 77, 78, something like that.
Yeah. So that was originally released by 20th Century Fox. I don't know if you remember that or not. But when you watch the original intro, it plays the 20th Century Fox fanfare, right?
Yeah,
and that directly leads into the Star Wars theme. So they kind of had to cut that off because it was no longer released by 20th Century Fox for a while.
Yeah.
A long time. And now they can add it back in.
But now it'll have to be the 21st Century Fox.
Well, that's part of their publishing, and sometimes they publish under that. Sometimes
what an inconvenient logo. They gotta change it every century.
But it's cool and not cool at the same time. I mean, selfishly, I think it's cool that the X-Men and the Fantastic Four are back home, which is pretty cool. But also, 10,000 people are potentially losing their jobs.
Yeah. Which
I don't like at all. Whenever I hear about these big companies downsizing or closing, I always wonder where the jobs are coming from that replace what these people are doing, because a 10,000 person workplace is not easy to replicate. So this is a huge company, so it's really a shame if that's the case. However, I will say that Fox has always been really terrible at treating their properties well. Like Futurama and Family Guy, have both been canceled and brought back because of their stupid scheduling and bullshit.
Oh, and they straight up kill the rest of development with their insane scheduling, to the point where the show just outright directly addressed the audience and said, "Tell your friends to watch the show." It was really sad.
Nah, HBO won't want us. But
the Home Builders Organization, no way.
But they're Disney characters too now, aren't they? Arrested Development. But yeah. Well, real interesting stuff. I think Disney will treat these properties better, hopefully, and maybe even there might be some revivals or of good Fox shows that have been canceled and all that. Al Bundy is now a Disney creation. Jeez. But if you're wondering, Fox News is not included in this. Fox News is still with News Corporation, who owns a lot of things that you probably don't realize that they own. They own Dow Jones, all of Dow Jones, which basically runs the stock market and reports on it. They own the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, amongst lots of other news outlets. So that is still separate, but basically all of their entertainment, as far as movies and television goes, that's not information based, is now Disney owned. So real interesting stuff. So any of your local Fox affiliates will now be Disney affiliates. Now they'll probably keep the branding. Also any FX shows. So Archer, Fargo. Geez, I didn't even think about this. Like, there's just tons of stuff that they acquired here. I don't foresee the changes being bad in terms of your favorite stuff. I'm worried about the layoffs. That's all.
Yeah, and I mean, well, going back to what you said about Google, I'll say the same thing about Disney. I don't like the idea of one corporation owning everything ever.
Yeah, I mean, luckily there wasn't a company that was lost here. It wasn't like completely, like Fox is still
Fox
its own
exists,
thing.
But it's just that Disney owns everything.
Well, no. Fox exists in a news capacity, I should say, and then Fox exists. The 20th Century Fox entertainment arm just folded into Disney. So the companies are two separate entities still. Fox and Disney are still independent of each other. They just Disney acquired a big chunk of them, if that makes sense. So anyway, I'm sure we'll see the repercussions of this later on, but probably the Marvel Cinematic Universe will drastically change. Is another thing, and probably streaming services as we know it. 20th Century Fox owns a big stake in Hulu. I think they own something like a third of it. And Disney has their own streaming service coming out very soon. So they may have two major streaming services.
And speaking of Disney streaming services, a lot of people are thinking that that's where all the Netflix Marvel shows are going to go, because all of a sudden they all got canceled at not the same time, but pretty close. Like Jessica Jones, Daredevil.
And they were all doing well. There's no reason.
It's not like, oh, well, this isn't working. They just vanished, and everyone was like, that's some bullshit. So, like, they may continue in the Disney, whichever streaming service, I don't know.
I mean, they're going to be starved for unique content and for a reason for you to subscribe to them. So I would very much doubt if Disney wasn't continuing on those things, especially with as acclaimed as they have been.
Yeah.
Like the last season of Daredevil, I think was the last one that came out, and apparently it was great. We'll see, right? So there's a lot of stuff to go on here. I could talk about that all day long, but this was a big thing. A lot of people never believed this would have happened, but Konami is coming out with a trio of collections, not just one. There was a rumor going around that there was a Konami Classics collection coming out because it had gotten raided somewhere. And it turns out they're coming out with 3 separate collections. Mm-hmm. Now they're all a little weird. And this is as a big Konami fan and big Konami nerd. They're all a little weird, but interesting and worth your time, I think. So I'll explain. The first one is the Arcade Classics. Now, this one is a collection of games that all have arcade ports already on current systems. All released by Hamster, who releases the Arcade Classics archives. And I've been talking about these for a long time. They release on Switch and PS4. They've been the ones releasing the Neo Geo games on Switch and PS4. They're very well handled and very good. Some of these have not gotten North American releases or European releases, so it's good that they are here. So I'll rattle off the list. So Haunted Castle, if you ever want to play that piece of trash Castlevania arcade game.
It's the best looking old school Castlevania game you've ever seen, but it's hard to the point of not being fun, like, at all.
I mean, it's good as a curio at best, and this is as one of the biggest Castlevania fans you'll ever meet. It's not a good game. Typhoon, also known as Ajax in other territories. So this is a shmup. It's kind of a less played one, so that's good that it's being released. It's just one of those rarer titles. So this is good. So Gradius and Gradius 2 are being released under their North American names, which is kind of funny. Nobody knows them as their North American names because they were only called that in the arcade. All the home releases were named after their Japanese names. So Gradius 1 is called Nemesis, and Gradius 2 is called Vulcan Venture. Nobody calls them that. But it's probably... I'll explain once I get to the end. And then also Life Force, which is also known as Salamander. So that's cool. The three Gradius games, which is pretty cool. I can't count Salamander as a Gradius game.
Yeah, I was going to say I thought Gradius 3 was the third Gradius game.
Well, Life Force is a spin-off, so yeah. Thundercross, which is another shmup. Scramble, which is their first shmup, which is actually a lot of fun. I really like Scramble a lot. And Twinbee, which is their take on Xevious. So, there aren't really any... first of all, I'll point out that there are some like drastically missing games here. So there's a couple, like, a few games that should be on this list that are important to Konami history that I don't understand why aren't. Them being Frogger is a a big game for Konami back in the old days. Puyon, which is their another big classic game for them. I'm just sad about this. Super Cobra is not on there, which is the sequel to Scramble. And Time Pilot isn't on there. So some of their older... These are more like their late 80s games, rather than their early 80s games, which... I want to see some unusual stuff. And Thundercross and Typhoon are unusual, so I'll give them that. They don't have many releases. But there's nothing too new here. A couple of them have not been released in this form in the United States and Europe. North America and Europe. So it's cool that there's easier access, but they haven't announced what any of the special features are, or even what options will be included. Like if you'll be able to play multiple regions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So. That's why it's a little weird. The next collection is Castlevania Collection. Now, this would normally make me extremely happy. But this one's weird and also incomplete as of right now. Castlevania 1 on NES. Great. That's what you want to see. Castlevania 3 on NES. Great. Castlevania Adventure 2. Belmont's Revenge. Okay.
On the Game Boy.
And from the Game Boy, and Super Castlevania 4, SNES. Great. Okay. Noticeable missing games. Castlevania 2, like where'd it go?
Castlevania 64, not inside at all.
Nobody's gonna be.
Castlevania Lords of Shadow, gone.
Judgment. You forgot Judgment.
Yeah, Judgment. That's the one I want.
You forgot the match 3.
The characters all drawn by the Death Note artist. And you might not think of it just by looking, but once you know, you can totally see it.
You forgot the Match 3 game that was on iOS, featuring Alucard. No.
You forgot if you put the PS1 Symphony of the Night disc in your PC and you get a message telling you not to listen to the music.
But you won't listen to me anyway. But anyway, Castlevania Adventure 1 is not on here. So there are 4 unannounced games. I should preface this. There are 4. So... likely candidates. Symphony of the Night and Dracula X are not going to be on this because they were released in a collection earlier last year. So, and that was PlayStation exclusive. So that's not going to happen. So we can already rule those out. I don't know why they would keep Castlevania 2 a secret. Why wait to say, oh, Castlevania 2?
Well, yeah, that's kind of why I think it's just not going to be on the collection.
So I think that's stupid because
it's the black sheep for a reason, but now that people understand how it works, it's really not a bad game.
Not only that, but it's part of their history. It's a game that everybody expects to be on there. It's a Nintendo classic.
Not to mention,
for better or worse.
Well, not to mention, people who know Castlevania's music probably
it has
know
the best music.
Yeah, they probably know what Bloody
Tears
Tears sounds like. They may not necessarily know what came from Castlevania 2, but that's where it came from.
Yeah, no, it has really great music. And they also don't specify whether you'll be able to region switch. So that's particularly important in Castlevania 3, where there was some censorship and also some big changes to the soundtrack.
Yeah,
also, big changes to the soundtrack in Castlevania 1 as well, because that was on the Famicom Disk System. So
yeah, honestly, though, like, I gave a listen to the Famicom Disk System version of, I forgot if it was Castlevania 1 or 2. I don't know if 2 had it, but
it's only slightly different.
But like, I wasn't a fan.
Yeah. All right, that's fair.
Like Castlevania 3 though, the Japanese version is insane. Like, you have got to look up like Akumajo Dracula 3 or whatever it's called, like soundtrack on YouTube or something. It's like there are whole instruments that America has been missing for like 30 years.
Now, I would say that the Famicom Disk versions of Zelda, Zelda 2, and Metroid all sound better, significantly. Okay. So it's not the case with every game. So don't.
Yeah, I haven't listened to those. The Castlevania I listened to, I was like, it's interesting because I haven't heard this before, but.
But so likely candidates, I think Bloodlines might be a good candidate to be on here.
The Genesis game.
Yeah, the Genesis game. I don't see Castlevania Adventure 1 being on here.
For the same reason 2 probably wouldn't be. Like, why would you announce Castlevania Adventure 2?
It's just not good.
Yeah.
Castlevania Legends will not be on here, I don't think, which is the third regular Game Boy one. Yeah. This one's a little tough. I think Bloodlines is very likely. And probably, I'm going to say, there's an outside chance that Castlevania Adventure Rebirth is on here.
The WiiWare game?
Yeah, because people have been clamoring for those games.
The various Rebirth games.
Yeah, so what is weird about that, though, is Gradius Rebirth doesn't have a home. Like, all of the games that were going to be on arcade classics, which is where it would fit.
Yeah, but to be fair, though, that one isn't a classic by these other game standards. They're all from the 80s, so, like, as cool as it would be to see Gradius Rebirth on there, it would be the one game from the 2000s.
Yeah, it stinks if it's the only Rebirth game that doesn't get a home. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And especially since it's the one that ties them all together, like, story-wise. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So anyway, I should also tell you that in its description it says it's the first Castlevania collection that they're going to release. So that means they have plans for other ones.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant it's the first time they've done this. I'm like, wouldn't this be the second time they've done this?
Yeah. So
I was gonna say I'm not thinking that Rondo of Blood's gonna be in there because they just released the dual pack Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night.
So I really can't think. I mean, what if they do 3 of the GBA games? And
that would be interesting. The GBA or DS stuff, that'd be pretty cool.
I don't think they'll do the DS ones. I think that they'll be on a later collection because those are the latest Castlevania games, except for the Lords of Shadow games.
Okay.
So I don't think they'll do that on this first collection. So who knows what these 4 games are? Is my point. And then you have the Contra collection, which is also really weird. And I'll tell you why. You have Contra Arcade, which is good. It's the original. Super Contra Arcade, second game. Okay. Super C for NES, which is the NES version of Super Contra. No Contra 1 on NES, which baffles me as to why that game has
Contra game. Like, it's
the game that everybody thinks of when they think of Contra. That and Contra 3, right?
Yeah.
So,
speaking of which, they do have Contra 3.
They do have Contra 3 Alien Wars, which is great. It's one of the best games ever made. So that's great. but no Contra 1 for NES. I'm thinking they must have some weird licensing issue, like maybe they outsourced the programming and didn't get all the rights back then, because that was done back in the 80s. And as a result, they don't fully own the rights to Contra NES. It's only been republished twice and in odd formats, and not anytime recently.
Maybe one of the unannounced games is going to be Probotector. That'll be a great way to dodge around it.
We'll see, but yeah, Contra 1 was only ever published on the PC, like way back in the day, like for Windows 95. With it, like it was like a Konami collection with like Jackal, and like it was a weird obscure boxed PC release, and they also released it on Contra 4's DS cart as a bonus, and it wasn't good. It wasn't like a good version of it because the resolution's weird. So, they've never released it on any of the Wii Virtual Consoles, and they've never released it on the NES Classic. Those games, if that game would have been released on those things, if they could have. Like, it's undoubted. People are looking to play Contra. That's one of the games that everybody thinks of when they think of the original Nintendo. So, so that's probably not likely. This one also has 4 unannounced games. This is really interesting. So I think Contra Hardcore is very likely.
Yeah, and again, like the one time it showed up on the Genesis.
Yeah. And then because that's basically the 4th Contra game.
Yeah, it even has the big T-800 skeleton opening the doors on the back of the screen. That was cool as hell.
I love that game. I love that game, so I really hope it makes it. But what else can like the only things that you could put some obscure games on there, like you could put the Game Boy game, you could put Operation C on there, and there's really not a whole lot else because they're not like Nintendo things. You could put Contra 4 on there, but that'd be weird because it's a DS game, right?
Yeah.
And you could put, I mean, Shattered Soldier and Neo Contra were PlayStation 2 games, so they're not likely.
Yeah, well, there's also the PS1 game, isn't there?
There's 2 PS1 games, and they're both definitely not likely. They've been excised from the timeline because they're both terrible. And they were made by Argonaut. Not Argonaut. They were made by the Appaloosa. Appaloosa, yeah. They were made by the company that made Echo the Dolphin. And I'm thinking probably Contra Rebirth is likely on this one because there just aren't enough.
Yeah, how many Contra games could there possibly be?
So I've named them all except for like various ports. There's like the Contra Alien Wars Game Boy game. I don't. Why would you hide that?
Yeah.
You know, like, and there's also a weird Contra Alien Wars port to the GBA that was no good. So, and why put that on there? So I'm thinking. Oh, there's also Contra Force, which is an odd game, and has never been ported ever. So that's the 3rd NES Contra game. So it was only released in the U.S. And is very much an obscurity.
Yeah.
So most people don't highly regard it at all. I luckily have a copy of it, but it's like a $300 game these days. It was only released in the United States too. So I don't know. Weird collections. I'm gonna buy them, but like these are coming out on PS4, Switch, Xbox One, and PC. I think they're coming out in all of those things. Yeah. So that's cool that they're all coming to those platforms. And it's cool that they're coming out, but I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it completely yet.
Yeah.
So, as a huge Konami fan, this was also a huge thing. I don't know if did you watch the Nintendo Nindies video that came out this week?
No, I tend to just hear about people who get excited about the best parts. So yeah.
Yeah, there's some really good stuff here. Really good stuff. This was way more exciting than the Konami announcement.
Yeah, the first thing on the list I am aware of, and it's insane.
Yeah, so the first one is Cuphead, which is a Microsoft property, is coming to the Switch on April 18th. So not very far away at all.
Yeah, Cuphead has otherwise only been available on the Xbox One and Steam and GOG, because, like, you know, Microsoft, you can do PC, but consoles, absolutely not. So, like, the Cuphead thing by itself has led people to speculate whether Microsoft is planning on collaborating with Nintendo more, and, like, does this mean that Ori and the Blind Forest is coming to the Switch as well in the future? Who knows? You know, stuff like that.
Well, that one is all but like majorly confirmed. I think that one was like confirmed in passing.
Okay.
Ori. So I believe that one is coming. Definitely. It's just we don't have a release date for it or anything. But it was really cool how they introduced it. They said our friends at Microsoft are bringing, like they said it that way.
That's
which is,
interesting.
Like, really interesting. Yeah.
Because like at previous developer conferences, you never really hear them directly mention the other names. Like, even when they're directly in competition. This is not the 90s where, like, it does what Nintendo don't. Like, companies don't do that anymore. Like, even when they're throwing shade at each other, they don't use names. So it's pretty interesting to say, like, yep, Microsoft, they're doing it.
Yeah, really cool stuff. I mean, they couldn't have picked a better game to start this out with, because this will be great on the Switch. It fits right in with their library, and it's a great game.
Well, not to mention that Cuphead. Well, yeah, a lot of people want to play Cuphead that can't. So this is a good opportunity for them as well.
Yeah, it's a fantastic game, one of my favorites. I still haven't beaten it, so this will give me an opportunity to beat it. So, there's a few other things here. So, Overland is from the creator of Cannibal, which looks like a new turn-based strategy game that's coming out in the fall. I don't know much of that, but it looks like the cool art style from Cannibal is kind of carrying over, which is pretty neat. Do you remember Cannibal?
I never heard of it.
You saw me play it at MagFest a couple times. It's an infinite runner where you're that little guy on top of the the buildings, and you're running, and things are falling down, and like things are exploding in the background.
Oh, that, yeah. Was that the same game that was like available on like Flash sites back when we were in high school?
Yep.
Okay, I just didn't know the name. I do know that game then.
Yes, you do. So that's cool. Awesome music, by the way.
Yes.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, but this one was cool. I don't know if people were following me on Twitter, but I added you on this one. My friend Pedro looks amazing.
Yeah, I saw this in the Devolver Digital E3 conference from last year's E3, where they were just like, "Here's a game we're doing," and it just showed crazy stunts and firing balls and ricocheting them off of various things and killing enemies in crazy ways. It doesn't look like my kind of game that like I would plan on beating, but it looks like really stupid, crazy fun that like anyone would get enjoyment out of for like bursts of time, I think.
Yeah.
This is something though that said, I would love to see this game speedrun.
I'm definitely going to play this game. It looks cool. It's a 2D action game, but the main character is like basically they described it as ballet mixed with like insane gun action, which is really cool. Like the stunts that you could pull off in this game are phenomenal. It just looks like a lot of fun. And it looks like it's surreal, which I'm always all about that. So I'm really looking forward to this game. And that's coming out in June. You have a new adventure game called NeoCab, which is pretty neat. It's like an adventure game where you have dialogue options, and you play like an Uber or Lyft driver kind of situation. You play like a rideshare adventure game. So you pick up people, and you basically talk to them and try to get the through dialogue options. You hear their stories, and you also try to get like the highest rating possible and that kind of thing. It sounded a bit like Papers, Please, but with like a rideshare structure, which is kind of cool. Well, that's coming out in the summer.
Well, it makes me think of Yakuza 5 when you're the cab driver. Like, you'll occasionally get dialogue options for the people in your cab, and you're just kind of trying to get them. It's not so much the best money from them. That's not really the issue with those.
Yeah.
But it's more like see their story through, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it seemed really pretty neat. There's the Red Lantern, which is an Iditarod dog sledding adventure game.
I thought it was when you put on a ring and you're fueled with your anger.
Yeah. 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 This game does sound pretty cool. I like the graphic style, and it looked like apparently there's a whole bunch of different situations that can happen to you while you are, going with your pack of sled dogs, and different things that can happen to you like on the way. They're procedurally generated, I think. So,
if you see a moose, is that just like an instant game over, like it would be in real life?
You died, just like Dark Souls.
Like moose are terrifying. Like they are bigger than you think they are.
Yeah, and they're very strong.
And they will fuck you up. They'll fuck your car up, dude. They don't care.
Yeah, that's later in 2019. There's Darkwood, which is an overhead Soviet survival horror game, which could look kind of neat, in May. Katana Zero, I'm actually really excited about. It looks like it's a 2D stylized ninja combat game. This kind of looks like a 2D side-scrolling, like almost like what's that? Hotline Miami. I'm sorry, Hotline Miami. Kind of game. It looks like it has some
aesthetic, because Hotline Miami was overhead.
Well, it's basically has some like drug trippy kind of stuff going on in it.
Okay, yeah, Hotline Miami is a very psychedelic, hazy kind of like whoa, what's going on kind of game.
So that's why I say that you're like this like modern / futuristic samurai, but like nothing else looks like you, and there's also like glitchy stuff going on, and like you go to see a weird therapist who gives you your medication, and you bug all out.
Oh, that is just like Hotline Miami, where like you go to the video store all the time, and then you get a phone call like I got a job for you, and then you go and just murder a bunch of people who may or may not actually be who you think you're killing.
Yep. This is a game called Rad. That's Katana Zero is coming out April 18th, so not very far away. Another game called Rad, which is from Double Fine, which is a great studio there. This one's coming out in the summer. It looks like a pretty cool action-adventure game featuring different mutations that you can get. It looks like you're in like a post-apocalyptic world, and you kind of like mutate along with with leveling up and getting different abilities, which look kind of pretty cool. I'm sure it's going to be good because Double Fine makes good stuff. This one looked especially good to me. Creature in the Well. It's a hack and slash adventure game, or action adventure game. So it's supposed to be kind of like a pinball-ish kind of game too, which is pretty neat. You have to solve these different boards by smacking around an energy ball. Huh. So that looked really neat. You should look up video of that. It looks really cool. That's coming out in the summer. Bloodroots. This one is a very fast-paced overhead adventure game. This is definitely going to be a game that is going to be speedrun, because that's kind of the point. It has highly detailed interactions with things that are on screen, like a lot of environmental objects. That looks interesting. These 3 games are all in the summer, by the way. Then they showed this game called Pine, which kind of looks like a scaled-down version of Breath of the Wild mixed with the the gang interactions from like Grand Theft Auto 3.
Oh wow!
Like yeah, so like it looked like
even Grand Theft Auto 2.
Yeah,
that was overhead though, so yeah.
It looked like a similar art style to Breath of the Wild, but it looks like you're a human and you interact with different factions of like anthropomorphic animals.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's like a fox tribe and a moose tribe, that kind of thing.
Sure.
And you can ally yourself with them or do missions for certain ones, or I guess do the red harvest thing by like screwing with them all and causing war to happen between them all. So that looked pretty neat. That was in August. And this is what I was really happy about. So Vlambeer is releasing a trilogy of games on the Switch. First is their classic Super Crate Box. This game is a lot of fun. It's a single screen game where you go around and you kill different enemies, and you each wave of enemies you get a different weapon, and that can either hinder you or give you an advantage, because the weapon can have some severe limitations depending on what it is. Like if it's a grenade launcher, the rate of fire is slow, for instance, and you have to be accurate. But if you have a machine gun, it's easy, that kind of thing. This game was a favorite of mine on the Vita, so I'm very happy that it's coming to the Switch. It also has an exclusive multiplayer mode, which is coming to the Switch as well. That's coming in April. This I'm very excited about, and went right away to my Switch. Vlambeer also released Nuclear Throne on the Switch, which I'm a huge fan of Nuclear Throne, and I've been you collect rats in that game anyway. Nuclear Throne is one of the best roguelites, one of my favorites. This goes right around with Enter the Gungeon for me, because it's like a shooting based one. I really love this game. Basically all of the really great roguelites, with the exception of Spelunky and FTL, have really made it to the Switch, which I'm really glad about. Rogue Legacy got on there. Binding of Isaac is on there, and it's all up to date. This is a great home for them because it's such a good genre for a portable system. So this is really cool. It also runs better than the PC version. Nuclear Throne runs really well on the Switch. So I'm very excited about that. And then they're releasing, this one's really interesting, this thing called Vlambeer Arcade, which apparently is like a new mini platform where they're going to release like mini games on. With their first game being this game called Ultra Bugs, which looks like a fun little shmup. But they're apparently going to release more games over time on that, which is pretty cool. Then they have an underwater multiplayer shmup. This is not from Vlambeer. I should say Nuclear Throne is already available for that, if you couldn't tell from what I said earlier. And the Vlambeer Arcade's in later 2019. Then moving on to another company, Swim Sanity is releasing in the summer. This is a multiplayer underwater shmup, which will look pretty fun, but I don't have much to say on it. Then Blaster Master 02 got announced, and it's already out, which is pretty neat. Great game. Blaster Master 0 was really great. I'm sure this game's really good too. The music sounded great, and so did the graphics. Look good. So. And then Stranger Things 3. This looked like a pretty fun game if you're a big fan of the series. And this was the biggest surprise of all. It's called The Cadence of Hyrule, and this is coming out in the spring. So this is a spin-off of the Legend of Zelda series and Crypt of the Necrodancer.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
So it's like a mashup. This is really cool that like a series like Zelda is pretty well protected, I would say. Nintendo only lets good things come about from Zelda.
And the CDI.
Yeah. But yeah, this looks like a lot of fun. I mean, it looked like Crypt of the Necrodancer, but with Zelda graphics and music. The music sounds phenomenal. I don't know if you heard the remixes yet, but some of them sound fantastic.
Yeah, Crypt of the Necrodancer just does brilliant things with the music that it uses, like the original and the remix.
Yeah, so I already have like all of the songs in Crypt of the Necrodancer and all like all the DLC on PC, but I never got a chance to play it. I may just buy it again for on the Switch because that's where I play my games primarily now. So it just makes more sense with my living situation. So I may even just pick it up in anticipation for this new one. I haven't played the game, but I know a lot of people who loved Crypt of the Necrodancer, which is a combination of DDR and dungeon crawling, right? Isn't that what it is?
Pretty much, yeah. I believe
Yeah.
you have to move and attack to a rhythm.
Yeah, and you're more effective if you do it within rhythm, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't played it either.
Yeah. A few other things that we have to get through here. Sega Ages. I've been talking about the series for a while. On Switch, they finally announced the North American and European release dates for Alex Kidd and Gain Ground, which is great. Nothing on Puyo Puyo yet, which is the only other game in the Sega Ages that needs to get some news on. But I think that those games have a lot of English translation that needs to be done, especially Puyo Puyo 2. So that may take a little while. Actually, I think Puyo Puyo 2 already got translated for the 3DS on the Sega Ages collection on that. So they may already have that done. So it may be coming sometime soon. Anyway, I'm happy either way. Then Spike Chunsoft had some announcements at GDC, so lots of stuff going on here. They talked about that game that we talked about the other week with the censorship.
Yes.
Zenki Zero.
Yeah.
But they also had two other games. Now, this one was pretty cool. AI, the Somnium Files. I am very interested in. They did a viral marketing campaign with this, like an alternate reality kind of thing, where they set up a couple Twitter accounts based off of the characters in this game before they had announced what the game was. So Spike Chunsoft said, "Hey, look at this new pop idol," and it was obviously not a pop idol, but it was like a video game character. And they went through this like story going on Twitter, like two characters, like a friend and this pop idol, were interacting with each other, and they at one point the pop idol gets kidnapped and disappears, and then there are weird things that show up on her YouTube account. They made her own YouTube account, and then they basically make a like very much like a Seven or like Saw kind of looking snuff film basically with her. It's so weird. It's like this anthropomorphic polar bear shows up and then starts lowering a buzzsaw on her. It's really bizarre.
Is this like Danganronpa, like another crazy bear doing crazy stuff?
No, but it looked like it was more realistic looking than that. It wasn't like a teddy bear, So yeah, it really freaky looking, but it looks like they announced a gameplay trailer, or they showed some of the gameplay, and it looks like you are picking apart as a detective what's going on in this, and trying to put clues together to try to discern what happened in the snuff video. So it looks really interesting. Definitely something that interests me, because I really like detective and investigation games.
Sure.
I also kind of like this kind of serial killer mysteries and stuff. They're fascinating. So I think it'll be something I pick up for sure. And then there was another action RPG called Crystar announced. That was less interesting to me. So AI is going to be on Switch and PS4, I believe, and PC. So Crystar, I believe, is the same thing. So Spike Chunsoft is really becoming a major publisher, which is kind of neat. There's also rumors that Professor Layton in the Curious Village is coming to Switch because there was some rating stuff that leaked
out. That would
out.
make me very, very happy, just for capture purposes.
Mm-hmm. So, that is the first Professor Layton game, so maybe other games to come as well.
That would be amazing.
Then Persona 5 The Royal was announced, which is the DLC for Persona 5, featuring a new female character. That's all pretty cool. I may wait on getting that DLC because I have the feeling that Persona 5 is going to come to the Switch. Just because of the Smash Brothers stuff. I mean, that's not always an indication. We know that of something going on because they've done it before where they've had guest characters that really haven't shown up. Like Ken and Ryu, for instance. Ryu was added to the last one, and there really wasn't much of a. The only Street Fighter games that were added were Virtual Console games to the Wii U, right?
Well, you also have that Street Fighter 2 on the Switch.
Yeah, but that was later. I'm talking about the fourth Smash Brothers games. The Wii U one and the 3DS one.
No, I know, but I'm saying, like, they released that super version of Street Fighter 2 on the Switch with, like, Violent Ken and Evil Ryu, like the updated Street Fighter 2. Like, obviously they didn't bring Street Fighter 5 over or anything.
You don't think that was as a result of...
Oh, not as a result, no, but they brought it out.
But what I mean is, it's an indication, like...
Yeah, and, like, we never
news.
got Final Fantasy VII on the Switch or Metal Gear Solid.
Actually, we did.
Really?
Yeah, Final Fantasy VII just got released on the Switch only a little while ago.
Never mind. Well, okay, Metal Gear Solid 1 then. There we go. Perfection.
Well, kind of did. You have the Twin Snakes.
Well, that was GameCube.
GameCube, yeah. Well, what I'm trying to say is there isn't always a reasoning behind there isn't like a dual reasoning behind putting these characters on in Smash Brothers, but I think more than likely they made a deal to kind of reciprocate. So I can't imagine that Atlas wouldn't want to bring. I mean, Atlas is owned by Sega, and Nintendo and Sega get along very well. I would be very surprised that Sega wouldn't be okay with it. So, who knows? But it's cool that there is more content coming, which is pretty neat. So I think it's this female character is going to be a main character. Like you could pick them instead. So, like a female version of Joker, I guess. The Joker's the main character, right? In 5?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So that'd be kind of cool. But she may be a side character either. I'm not real too keen on it, so don't call me on that. Don't at me, bro. Yeah, so lots of interesting stuff, huh, Lotus?
Yeah, I guess. But by the way, a couple of other things I'd like to point out, by the way, is you had mentioned Stranger Things 3 was getting a game, but in that vein, Stranger Things 3 is coming, like the season. So I'm super hyped about that as well. And one other thing I really got a kick out of is the upcoming Mortal Kombat 11. They have Shang Tsung, and he looks like Mortal Kombat 1 Shang Tsung with the long white beard. But the part that I really like is that his face is modeled after like the actors from the movie.
Oh, cool!
That's super cool.
That is cool.
Mortal Kombat definitely respects its previous material. Like even in Mortal Kombat 9. Kano had the heavy Australian accent, and like his character had no business like having that voice based on Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3, but the movie just sold it so well. They were like, you know what? That's what Kano sounds like.
I mean, that's a well-regarded video game movie. I mean, it's one of the better ones.
Yeah, it's pretty solid. Yeah.
Just a couple other little things here before we wrap things up for the week. The Mega SG has started shipping.
Yes, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, did you get your shipping notification? I did.
Yep.
Okay, great. So we could talk about that once we get ours and get a chance to fiddle around with it. But I can't wait to hook up my my Sega CD, Model 2 to it and mess around with it. So I'm really excited about that. And let's see here. So this had been dropped for a while, so I was really getting worried about these, especially with the staffing changes over at Xseed. But Corpse Party, Sweet Sachiko's Birthday Bash, or whatever that's called.
Yeah, Sachiko's like Hysteric Birthday, and I think in Japan it's like birthday, like the number 2, the letter U, or something weird like that.
That got an official release date, so we're getting that on April 10th, real soon.
Yeah, I'm very happy about that. Like, it's gonna take me a little bit to get to it, but I absolutely plan on let's playing that game because that'll bring the whole series together.
Yeah, I guess I should have guessed that this was coming because they put all of the Corpse Party games on sale last weekend, I think. So usually when they do that, there's like an announcement or something having to do with the series. On PC anyway, the Steam version. So a Blood Drive and the original game. So I ended up buying those, even though I probably won't.
The original game isn't on Steam, I don't think. Because that was a PSP game. Well, I guess they all were, but like I don't think the original's on there. I think it's just
no, it is.
It's called. They have Book of Shadows, but the original game.
It's just called Corpse Party. Look it up.
Huh. I mean, well, I know they have the original, like, game that was not on the PSP, like the really old version.
So, yeah, so it's the really old version is on... The really old PC version is on there.
Yeah, so that's a different game from the one that the other games are, like, canonically connected to. Like, the first game that America got was... sort of like the updated version of the PC game, and it's like unofficially called Blood Covered to distinguish it from the original game. But the original game, like, it has a fucking boss fight at the end. It's just like, what? And like certain character traits
are different.
Yeah, like you don't fight in Corpse Party, and certain character traits are a little bit different. Like, everybody's got the same name and everything, but their personalities are a bit different. Like, the PSP game is not on Steam. The original like RPG Maker like PC game is. So that I don't know how like I still haven't played it. I don't know how well that lines up with the sequels. Maybe it's better than I thought.
Oh, and it wasn't Blood Drive, it was Book of Shadows. I'm sorry, that's on there.
Yeah, exactly. Book of Shadows is the sequel to the PSP game that we got, Blood Covered. And Blood Drive was the Vita game, and I don't believe that's been ported.
Yeah, that's the game we're still waiting for after Sachiko to get a Steam release. That one was they announced that along with the rest of the announcements.
That's right. Yeah, Book of Shadows is up. Hysteric Birthday is coming, and I guess Blood Drive will come after that, and I hope it does because that wraps up the series. Because without it would be like having Danganronpa on Steam, but not Danganronpa 2. It's like, what?
Yeah, I do wish the DS game was on Steam. That would be 3DS, really good.
Yeah. The 3DS game is the PSP first one, but with 3D capability and I believe an extra chapter.
It's basically the definitive version if you want to play Corpse Party now.
Yeah,
the original Corpse Party.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's cool that they didn't drop this, and that it's actually coming out, and we have, it's coming out soon.
Yeah, sooner than I thought.
Yeah, and not only that, but like this kind of game could get easily dropped. You know, we're very lucky to get it at all. So really cool.
This was the game that, like, the whole series was brought over because Xseed was passionate about it, but Hysteric Birthday was too obscure even for Xseed to like risk. But apparently they went through with it anyway.
Real cool. I'm glad that it's coming very soon. And this is a final one. This is really cool. Really interesting. Also proves that there's no bad blood here. Suda51 is actually returning to do a DLC, batch of DLC for Fire Pro Wrestling World.
That's crazy.
And the Fire Pro Wrestling series is a very old series. It first started on the PC Engine. Or TurboGrafx 16 in Japan. So his first game that he worked on and wrote for was Fire Pro Wrestling Special, which was one of the Super Famicom entries. And it had a very shocking and iconic ending where the main character commits suicide at the end of the game. He got well known as a video game writer because of that game. So it's really cool that I don't think he's returned to human entertainment since he left after doing. There was some kind of murder game. There was some kind of adventure game that he did with them, but it was right before the Silver Case. So it was called Moonlight Syndrome. Does that sound right?
It's something like Moonlight Symphony, maybe.
I think it's Moonlight Syndrome.
Yeah, that was a game that was on PS2, wasn't it?
PS1.
PS1? Because I'm not 100% sure if I have this right, but in Killer 7, there's like a random anime scene that seems to have absolutely nothing to do with anything. Like, there's this girl you've never met before. She's talking about stuff you don't know what it is. And apparently it was a reference to that Moonlight Syndrome game, which America never got. So I was
Wait, what game was this in?
Killer 7.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like, one of the scenes is just like, what? And it's never explained, and that was supposed to be like a wink to the Moonlight game. Just like how when you first see Andre Almeida on TV, the channel is Zaka TV. That's not a critical reference that you have no idea what the scene is, but that itself was a shout out to Michigan Report from Hell. But this was an entire cutscene that makes no sense, I guess, unless you've played Moonlight Syndrome. But Americans haven't, so that was just confusing.
So he wrote for Human Entertainment. He directed Twilight Syndrome, the first one, which was called Search, Twilight Syndrome Investigation, and then Moonlight Syndrome, which was the third, and he wrote that one.
Okay.
So yeah, I was right. And there's references to Moonlight Syndrome, I think, in Danganronpa 2, which is kind of weird. But anyway, have you gotten further in Danganronpa 2?
Nope.
Okay. Did you see where they had the game within the game? This isn't a...
Well, I know you have like a Tamagotchi.
Okay, no, then you haven't gotten to that part yet. I'm not ruining anything.
No, we haven't even gotten to the first murder. Like, I haven't advanced at all in Danganronpa 2 since over a year ago. Like, we just never got around to continuing it.
Gotcha. I'm actually on the 5th chapter, which I think is the last. I picked it up again recently. But anyway, this is really cool. So this basically, we know that Goichi Suda is a huge wrestling fan, especially of luchadors, and he'll definitely bring something really fun to the table. I have been mulling around buying Fire Pro Wrestling World for a while now because I know it's one of the best regarded wrestling games out there, despite it looking pretty ancient by modern standards, because it's basically sprite based. But apparently it's ace. It's really good. It has like a fantastic character creator, and it has just tons and tons of content. It has a lot of really cool DLC. So it has a lot of. I think it has Japan Pro Wrestling. Japanese pro wrestling wrestlers in there as well. I think Kenny Omega might even be in it. Yeah, New Japan Pro Wrestling characters in it. So there's like all kinds of stuff that's really cool about the modern one, and it's really neat that they asked him to, come and do some content. So I'll buy it definitely when that starts showing up. So I'm really excited about that. Even if I'm not the biggest wrestling fan, I do like wrestling periphery, and I'll play a game like that for a little bit just to have a little bit of fun. So I'll probably I'll enjoy that. So I think that's a ton of stuff that we went over this week. Do you have any final words before we sign off?
No, that was pretty much it. Just wanted to throw in the Stranger Things and Mortal Kombat 11 things.
Awesome. Well, definitely comment on these things below because, on the YouTube and SoundCloud pages, because there's tons of really great news here to talk about and some speculation. So definitely give us your thoughts on it. That is the show for this week. Please remember to subscribe to the Corrective Consciousness YouTube and SoundCloud pages. While there, please give us likes and 5-star ratings on iTunes and thumbs ups if you care to. It helps promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Thursday for our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. Finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, Twitter, Battle.net, and Switch.
And you can follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, if you're interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, like The Suffering, which is going public now, or getting involved in a Discord conversation with me and other patrons, then perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon account, which can be found at patreon.com/LotusPrince.
And we will catch you next time on Thursday for Corrective. We are doing a really awesome show on detective and investigation games in general. So with the Judgment news that's been coming out, and also this AI game that's coming out that looks pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to that with Lotus, and we'll catch you then.
Until next time, everyone.
Bye bye.